Guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Movie Fandom Show. I'm your host, Matthew Kearns, and with me today I have one of the founding members of Take Three Productions, Chris Doman. How you doing today, Chris?
I am doing well, Kearns. When you first told me about this show you wanted to do, obviously, yes, myself and one of the other co-founders, Bryan, we instantly said we really want this on the channel. And dude, you have been nothing but a blessing to have as a member of the staff, and I can't wait to talk about today's movie with you.
And that movie we're discussing today is what Chris would call a classic, what some would call a wait, that came out? It is 1993's The Three Musketeers, released by the Walt Disney Company.
Yes, this is a classic piece of early 90s cheese but fun.
But like
Obviously,
in the best way.
exactly. And obviously a little backstory on it. As most of you guys are probably aware, it's based off of the 1844 novel by Alexandre Dumas, and of course French writer. And there's been 20 million adaptations of it, but this has always been regarded as one of the best, and not necessarily in terms of adaptation, because yes, the original novel was still a little bit, quite a bit different,
Mm-hmm.
but my God, in terms of just fun action movies that the whole family can enjoy, this one tops pretty much most of them.
Yeah, I think an interesting thing to remember is this came out in 93, so like Disney, when people talk about the Disney Renaissance, they're specifically talking about in the anime films, but you look at the early 90s from both their theatrical films and their animated films, they were truly in a renaissance. They were all great movies, well put together, and this is a movie that I love ever since the first time I saw it. And Chris, when was the first time you saw Three Musketeers?
I first saw Three Musketeers when I was really, really little, probably 5 or 6. I had it on VHS. It was, I think, was part of the um, Walt Disney Classics collection, something like that. It was, but it was on VHS, which, to not to get a little too overly nostalgic, but which of course was the best way to watch it, because you always got these cool previews of other films. And I remember at the end, if you actually stuck around to the credits, you've got even more trailers, which that
Mm,
just blew my damn mind
in
as a
the white
kid.
clamshell case.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And on the poster it was, of course, Kiefer, Oliver, Charlie, and Chris just doing the most epic pose with their swords.
Yeah, they really don't produce stuff like this anymore. For me, the first time I saw, the first time I heard about this movie was actually, I forget which year it was, but when Doug Walker of Channel Awesome did Disney December, there was one year where he covered, of course not all, but like a lot of the live action Disney films, and then this was one that he did, and I remember watching his review of it, and the thing I love about Doug is he doesn't spoil the movies, and I was like, man, that seems like a really awesome movie. I want to go and like check this out, and I did, and I immediately fell in love with the movie. I was like, this is just so, as a kid who loved the Indiana Jones movies and the National Treasure and the first Pirates movie, like this just fit into that sort of realm. Princess Bride, like these sort of just great fantasy adventure movies. So, Chris.
Yeah, no, and the funny thing about it is, on a couple levels I can get the argument that, where, because unfortunately it's not the highest rated film on Rotten Tomatoes, but dude, like,
Who cares?
who cares? That's not what the film was ever really about. It was about being a fun adaptation of a classic novel that, Disney did take a few risks with, because you wouldn't see a film with this much, drinking and violence in modern day Disney cinema. That's just not how they work. But
Yeah.
back then, This came out the same year as Cool Runnings and Hocus Pocus, which those were also big risks on Disney's part. So I it it still baffles me that that all happened from such a family friendly company.
Yeah, and you know the thing is, you talk about, yeah, it's a little dark. Even just the villain's plot is a fairly like, I mean, even the opening of the movie is like a dude getting tortured. Like that's how the movie opens, and it's. But there's something about Disney. You know, Disney, when you look at a lot of their movies, yes, they're known for light-hearted, movies, but like, I mean, just look at the first film they released. Snow White has a ton of dark, just like demented shit in it, and you're like, this is a movie that this is like a movie that kids are shown when they're like really young, and no one like bats an eye because it has a Disney logo on it. It's crazy, but I think we were talking, of course, before the show, and we were talking about how this came out the same year as Jurassic Park, and Jurassic
Same
Park
year I was born.
is an interesting, wow. Same year. Uh, it's an interesting Jurassic Park is an interesting point in film because it is Terminator 2, the Young Adventures, Sherlock Holmes, all were steps for CGI, but Jurassic Park was that was the turning point. That was, if Jurassic Park failed, we don't really have CGI like we do now, but Jurassic Park did what it did. It changed everything, but it still was very practical. It still was a practical adventure that used CGI when it needed to. I bring that up because Three Musketeers, when you look at it you'll never see a movie made like that. I mean, just even comparing it to the 2011 one, like that movie is just a CGI mess. And I don't like that movie, but you can compare acting and all this, but just from like a adventure filmmaking standpoint, I think this version is one of the best because it's all practical. All the explosions, all those sword fights, all the horse races, and I don't mean like in a derby, but
Yeah,
people know. If you've seen the movie, you know what I mean? Like that's all
exactly.
real. They wouldn't make, like, if Disney was to remake this, it'd be all CGI. It would be all of it. Like that end fight where it's literally hundreds of extras all fighting each other. That would be like today. It'd probably be like a couple of guys and then just CGI a bunch of dudes in the background, and it just wouldn't look good. But let's get into the film and its stars. So the first one we already brought up is Kiefer Sutherland. I almost said his dad's name, Donald Sutherland, but no, Kiefer Sutherland, who at this time, like, the dude was like a really bankable actor. Like he was a hot commodity.
Oh, he was. I mean, well, Jesus Christ, this whole entire cast, uh, as far as the main players,
It's a who's who of
exactly. I
1990s
mean,
adventure
you
films,
have
action movies.
like we mentioned, you have Keith Sutherland as Athos. You have Chris O'Donnell as D'Artagnan, who I'll admit is not the best on-screen D'Artagnan we've had, but he still
He's
owns
still
the
really
role.
good, I think. I think
Yeah,
he's
he's still
really good.
really good
We have Charlie Sheen as I forget what.
as Aramis,
We have Oliver Platt.
as Porthos the pirate. Oh my God! Yeah,
We have
oh,
Rebecca De Mornay.
risky business herself. Yeah, and she
Yeah,
was still hot at this point.
and we have
Gabrielle Anwar is Queen Anne, who you guys might know from
oh
Burn Notice. You have
oh
Michael Wincott playing the best secondary villain of all time, Captain Rushford. And then now
Tim
Current
Curry.
as the bad guy.
For people watching who are maybe a bit younger than Chris and who I was born in '97, so I grew up on like Disney Channel ran all of these movies, like '90s films, and Muppets Treasure Island was one of the first Disney movies I saw. So like, I got to grow up with prime Tim Curry. Okay, so for you who like only know Tim Curry from like the recent stuff he's done, like Tim Curry was like I'll say him and Michael Keaton at one point were the two most bad shit actors in the world, but in the greatest way possible. And Tim Curry gives one of the most over like zealous performances, but I couldn't imagine it's the way to describe his role in this film is imagine Judge Frollo from Hunchback of Notre Dame, except like it, like the Vicious Spinal Tap where it's just turned up to 11. That is him in this movie. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Like, dude, just here are some of the lines that he gives in the film that are just spectacular. Like, you know, as the people then turn to their devout spiritual leader. Or when he has to go a little more crazy and get a little more into it, and he's 3,000 gold pieces for their heads, dead or alive. I prefer dead. Of course, one of my all-time just favorite lines that he gives. You of all people should know that the cardinal does not answer to the laws of men.
That's what it is.
Oh God, yes.
Oh Jesus,
I mean,
he is so good.
His take on Cardinal Richelieu is absolutely beautiful. I mean, look, okay, here's a line for over the top. This is where he is. He is in Jeremy Irons in Dungeons and Dragons territory. It is glorious.
The thing is, it's different. Is where, and I love Jeremy Irons as an actor, but the thing is, where Jeremy Irons, when he went over the top in that film, it seemed more a writer like out of place, trying to put comedy, or just like a director and actor not really being on the same page. This just feels like they went. When they're casting, they went, okay, so we have this really like vile villain, and we just want someone who like is going to bring like flamboyancy to the role, and that's why they cast Tim Burry. Like he's very flamboyant and like the just even the way in his movements, like when he near the end of the film, when he's sort of telling the king his plan that he's going to be taken over, just how he sits on the throne, just throws his like cape onto the other one, and he just sits down. You're like, I just feel like no one directed him to do that. He just did it, and it's awesome.
Well, and that's the funny thing, is that the director of the film, Stephen Herrick, he's more so known for doing films where he would just sort of shoot and let the actors work. I mean, take a look at his interpretation of, for example, he did Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, he did Mighty Ducks, and he did Rockstar.
Oh my God, he did Mighty Ducks?
Yeah, he also did the live action 101 Dalmatians, as well as there's one other one, Mr. Holland's Opus. There we go, with Richard Dreyfuss. Like his style has always more so just been, I'm more focused on creating the shot, and I'm more focused on creating the atmosphere, but I'm gonna let the actors actually do their job.
Yeah, and you know what the thing is, you bring that up, I think you could say, oh, that's a bad way of directing. You're like, yeah, it is, if you have a bad cast, but like, look at this cast we mentioned. It was probably the best thing for this movie to be like, these people know what they're doing. I mean, we already talked about Donald Sutherland was like huge at the time. You had Charlie Sheen, who was coming off of movies like Wall Street, like, dude can act. Also, if you want to go into his comedy, I believe Hot Shots Part 2 was right before this, so like his comedy works. Oliver Platt, of course, his comedy. Rebecca De Mornay is a great dramatic actress. She had, I believe, her last film before this was Backdraft. So like Chris O'Donnell is the one. He was kind of new, but then again, having a wide-eyed, like innocent actor is the perfect one to have in that role, because that's the character in the world is supposed to really not understand it, and it works.
And to be fair, I think most of the criticism towards O'Donnell in the film just comes from the script, which, yes, I will concede is not the greatest script in the world, but to be fair, I never said this film is like, oh, it's a groundbreaking revolution in action cinema. No, it's a early 90s fun fest.
Exactly.
This is
It's
a movie that
fun.
you go to have fun, and you just throw a bunch of popcorn in your face and you soak it in, and then
Exactly.
you move on. But you know, the reason it stuck with me for as long as it has is the going back to this cast. Like when I watch them on screen, yes, I know I'm looking at Oliver Platt, I'm looking at Michael Wincott, I'm looking at Tim Curry, but all I see are the characters.
Same here, and that's actually a very like hard thing to do when you cast like actors like this. Like that's a pretty hard thing to do to just have, me and Chris to just be like, I'm not seeing, Kiefer Sutherland and Charlie Sheen right now. I'm seeing the characters they're playing. And it's so there's so many great moments in this movie. So I'm just gonna ask Chris, do you happen to have like a favorite scene, a line, whatever?
Oh God! Oh fuck you! That's
Because I have mine, so I can go. I mean,
please. I gotta think.
and it's Michael Rushford. I get his name wrong.
Michael Wincott as Captain
Wincott.
Rushford.
Wincott. Yeah, I'm melding the character names, and it's Kiefer Sutherland and him are having the sword fight. This is stuff that I love. Just this is I love adventure movies like this. This is the fight at the end of Princess Bride when it's Inigo Montoya versus Six Finger Man. This is Indiana Jones versus the General on top of the tank. Like I just love these just classic hero villain adventure battles that build up, and it does build up, and it's great. And oh god, I love this. Chris, have I given you enough time to think of yours, or is it too hard? Is it picking children?
Okay.
Am I making it pick children?
Okay. Now I'm gonna cheat, and I'm gonna pick two.
All right.
One is the introduction of D'Artagnan when he's fighting Gerard in the field. And well, what's amazing is, so for all you Doctor Who fans out there, here's a fun bit of trivia. That's Paul McGann as Gerard. That is the Doctor before he became the Doctor. Yeah, and D'Artagnan! It's like
his eyes bug out when he says that.
I mean, I seriously, Paul, one day I want to meet you so I can just ask, who the hell was your vocal coach for that movie?
If I ever met him, I'd just yell at him, D'Artagnan! D'Artagnan!
And then my other favorite sequence is when the assassin is trying to take out the king on his birthday, because, dude, there is some legit suspense going on here.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you have had this entire film to get caught up on the narrative. You have had backstory, and you have had so much fuel to the fire going in for this. But then, as D'Artagnan notices the assassin, he's just running as fast as he possibly can, and he barely makes it the nick of time. And the whole time, you're just like, oh, dear God, is he going to make it? Now, granted, yes, Disney film. They're not going to show an assassination in their film. It just, it gets you freaked out because, and again, literally, the scene right before it, Gabrielle Anwar, the queen, is talking to King Louis, and, she's like, dude, he's going to try to kill you. But he's like, no, we're going to stop him together as husband and wife. We're going to do this. And it's the payoff of seeing Porthos gun down the assassin, and he just gives this look of like, I'm a badass.
I love it. Also, if we're cheating and choosing our scenes, then I see Charlie Sheen's introduction when he's teaching her the lessons from the Bible, and then they start making out, and then she's like, oh, my husband's home. He didn't say you were married. And just him leaping out of the window. It's like, that's such a great character introduction.
Talk about art reflecting life there, huh?
As we wrap up here, I think there's something that I've always liked in this movie. I think it's more just like from who I am, and like D'Artagnan's romance in this movie, I actually kind of like. A lot of people don't, but I like the whole thing of how he, while falling in love with her throughout the course of the film, he's also seen Kiefer Sutherland's side of falling in love young and what that does. And so it's interesting. It's an interesting love story and love being told in this movie, both sides of it.
This is actually something I really want to talk about. Like, dude, I mean, yeah, I know we try to keep the show, under a certain amount of time, but you want to know something? If we go long, we go
Yeah,
long
yeah.
because this is something I actually do really want to get into. This is again one of the criticisms of the film I cannot disagree with more. The way that this movie tackles romance, again, for a family-friendly, fun action film, I think it's fantastic
I mean,
because
it talks about arranged marriages, and sometimes when you're not in love with someone, but you're kind of forced to be, what that can do. It talks about broken love and sometimes falling in love too fast and then realizing that you're not right for each other, and then the more classic meeting and falling in love. It's so interesting.
yeah, no, I mean, yes, and obviously they sort of explore all the options. You have D'Artagnan and Constance, who, yeah, they are the traditional. We we met 3 days later. We're gonna be a thing. It's not necessarily marriage, at least not right away, but they're it's implied they're a thing. Then you have King Louis and Queen Anne, and for an arranged marriage, you buy them. You buy them as two smart, thinking people who are capable of making their own decisions. And
They were
yeah,
forced together. They were
exactly,
forced to be together.
exactly.
And they don't not like each other. It's just like I kind of get the sense it's like if they were allowed to naturally be together, then you get what you get at the end of the film, a relationship. But you get this sense of like they met each other the day of the wedding. It was like, ah, this is your wife. You're gonna be together forever. Enjoy. Doesn't matter that you don't love her.
Yeah, no, but again, and it does feel natural that they do come together instead of letting the cardinal drive them apart. In fact, it's the cardinal who brings them together. The one romance that I'm so glad that they develop and actually have it pay off is the character of Sabine and Athos. Obviously Rebecca De Mornay
Yeah.
and Kiefer Sutherland, because you get both perspectives. You get his side of the story when he's telling D'Artagnan at the bar, "Love, let me tell you a story about love. I knew of a count," and so on and so
Mm-hmm.
forth. And you also have, Lady de Winter, when she tells her side of what happened to her husband, and then how she hooked up with Athos, and that how it fell apart. But then,
The
before she gets
cliff.
beheaded on the cliffside, it's he actually he says, "Look, I took you out of my life, but I'm sorry. Please forgive me." Like
It's
that
yeah.
is that is such a touching moment.
And
And
it's actually Kiefer Sutherland plays the scene in the bar so well because when you go back and watch this second time, you can pick up that like, yeah, he's telling a story about himself. Like some people, I'm sure, are like, oh yeah, he's talking about himself. But like when you see the cliff scene and then you go back and you watch the bar scene again, you're like, and that's a guy with a lot of baggage with this relationship that he's talking about, and he's trying to keep Chris O'Donnell from making the same mistake. So we're gonna start wrapping up here. Chris, what are your final thoughts on Disney's Three Musketeers?
I love this movie because it does so many things well. It has great action, great characters, a great, it adapts a great story, and I think the adaptation it does is phenomenal. But we forgot to touch on one really huge reason as to why this film works. It is one of the funniest movies I have ever seen in my fucking life. I mean,
Yeah,
like, okay, I'm sorry. We might go a tad bit longer. I know you just said you want to start wrapping up, but
yeah.
we, you gotta give me at least a couple minutes on this.
All right, roll.
Thank you. Oliver freaking Platt. Every single time that I want to write a funny character in a script or something I'm working on, he is the character Porthos is my go-to inspiration. It's like, okay, what would Porthos say here? What would Porthos do here? You know, it's left an impact on me that uh it's carried over, it's transcended a little bit. For example, if I want to make a great side villain, I my go-to is Captain Rochefort.
So the voice. Voice. Oh my God. I can't even do an impression of it. It's so.
What a shame. Killed by the same man who killed his father.
The voice is so good. That's why he's my number 2.
Well, to be fair, it's not his fault that he's not quite as devout as Tim Curry.
Oh
But
my God,
and
yeah.
of course, if you're gonna fucking put Tim Curry in a movie, it better be as the main villain so he can chew all of the scenery. But yeah, no, I love this movie. It's stuck with me for so many years, and I will make sure I show my kids this because more people need to see it. Frankly speaking, guys, please, if you can, go find the 1993 Three Musketeers movie. You will not regret it.
Yeah, actually, me and Chris talked about this. This is a fairly difficult film to find physical medium. It's one of the ones that has been put in the Disney Vault, sadly. It is, you can find it on Amazon. Go rent it. It's worth the time. If me and Chris talking about this for nearly half an hour hasn't, made you want to go and watch it, like, just watch the trailer, do whatever. Watch Doug Walker's review on Disney December, and I think you'll want to see it. My final thoughts are, I love this freaking movie from the first time I saw it, and it is if we're talking about overall Disney, it's in my top 10 Disney films. If we're talking strictly live action, it's top 5. I have so much fun with this movie, and I'm so glad Chris brought this on, because this is really something that I love to do with the movie fandom show, is like Chris Clark we just did with Batman Returns, like talk about these movies that have maybe been forgotten or majority don't like, and we can show the good, and hopefully you guys will want to go and see it. So I want to thank my buddy Chris for coming on. Chris, where can the people find you online?
Yeah, dude. Thanks for finally getting me on the show, and thanks for actually you being the one to suggest that we talk about this one, and I instantly lit up. I'm like, ooh, Misa like this. But you guys can follow me on Twitter at my band Last Shot of Redemption at LSAR Band MN. You can follow Take 3 Productions on Twitter at Take 3 Trivia. And of course, you can find me hosting our Schmodown reactions, the worldwide movie trivia, as well as a little show I might be bringing back.
Of course, you guys, as always, can find me at Kearns_Matthew on Twitter, MattMovies611 on YouTube, and right here hosting the movie fandom show every other Wednesday. I want to thank you guys for watching, and remember, keep loving movies. And now we're going to close out the show for the first time ever with music.
Megan?